My name is Peg Weathers, and I'm the President and CEO of the Kirkwood De Pere Area Chamber of Commerce. We are hosting a webinar this afternoon with 3 members of the Chamber, experts in their respective areas, to review stimulus resources available to you. We've gotten lots of questions, and while some of you have already filed some of these resources, I still receive many questions, and we thought we could handle them today by hosting a Q&A and hopefully providing you information you might not already have. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Elias Corpus.
All right, thank you, Peg. So just real quick, just want to name who we have also on with us today is we have Andrew Wilson, who's the Vice President of Business Banking and is Business Banking Specialist with Enterprise Bank and Trust. We also have Gene Field, who is an enrolled agent and the owner of the Liberty Tax, here locally in Rock Hill. So again, thank you guys for joining. Hopefully this will be helpful, and thank you, Andrew and Gene for jumping on and sharing your expertise and your knowledge today. We're just going to start very basic at the very beginning. So Andrew, this first question goes to you. What exactly is the CARES Act?
CARES Act is new legislation that was just signed by the president, outlining a number of different relief features for businesses and individuals with regard to the current economic situation resulting from COVID-19 and trying to curb some of the fallout as a result.
Yeah, very good. So one of the first areas that we're going to really focus on today is going to be, I guess, first and foremost, is really what is the Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP, that many may know by. So if you want to take that question too there, Andrew.
Sure thing. So the Paycheck Protection Program went live this past Friday for employer businesses. So business that was in business as of February 15th. Some of the other highlights as far as qualifications for a business go: less than 500 employees, must have been in business February 15th, anyway, those are just a few of there are a number of qualifications,
Sure.
But it is designed to help employers keep their employees on staff during this tough time where a lot of businesses have been hit really hard, particularly with stay-at-home orders and that type of stuff. Okay. So it is a program that you can apply for through your bank. It's directed through the SBA, but will be administered by banks. So you can apply for 2.5 months worth of payroll expenses. Business owners can calculate that from an average monthly payroll expense from 2019. Take your 12 months average payroll, multiply that by 2.5, and that's the number that you can apply for the Payroll Protection Program loan application. It is technically a loan. The interest rate is 1%, and it's a 2-year loan. However, there's a forgiveness feature to it, where if 75% of the funds are used for payroll purposes, in an 8-week period following loan disbursement, then you'll be able to apply through that same bank for complete forgiveness. Otherwise, it is a 2-year loan at a 1% rate. Additionally, the SBA has put in place a program to defer loan payments for 6 months during this time. So a business wouldn't have to make any payments for 6 months. However, during that 6-month time, interest is still accruing on that 2-year term.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all really good information. And Gene, I want to go over to you. So what type of businesses, and entities are eligible for the PPP loan?
The businesses, they mostly have to have payroll. That's a biggie. And many of them also have to pay, if I've got the right loan one, they have to be smaller businesses. But we're looking at probably an independent contractor who might have 5 or 10 employees. Those are the folks that this is most geared towards. The really, really micro small businesses may not be able to benefit as much.
Okay, so maybe you're like your sole proprietors, maybe your small LLCs. That's more maybe where this PPP that are actually employing somebody. This would
Correct.
Okay, very good. And then what are the affiliation rules? With the PPP.
I'm not as versed on that one. You have to basically be an entity. If you're controlled by a bigger entity, the bigger entity comes into play. So if you have a C Corp owning an S Corp, that could be a problem. So it's really looking at the smaller. One question that comes up is how to apply for these things if you're owned by a retirement plan, which is how many franchises are financed.
Sure.
They're geared towards take it as you're the sole owner.
Okay, and then are there certain different types of nonprofits that may qualify also for the PPP?
I'm not as aware, Peg. You might know a little bit more about the nonprofit rules.
501c3s are covered in the current legislation. 501c6s, which the chamber is, and advocacy organizations are not presently. Although there is an other box on the application, you can check that, but it's not specified in the application currently that 501c6s are covered. And in fact, we understand they're not, but 501c3, so most charitable nonprofits are.
Okay. Yeah, so just for clarification here, so 501c3s, 501c19s, and nonprofits with 500 employees or fewer, as most nonprofit SBA size standards by the employee count. So both of those look like they should be in qualification in there. So Peg, or not, I'm sorry. So Gene, you were talking about how do I apply for the small business loan, and Andrew, you also alluded to that too. So you guys can kind of tag team this if you'd like.
Andrew, I'll go for you.
Gotcha. So small businesses who employ individuals were able to apply through an SBA preferred bank or lending institution that had applied for permission to administer payroll protection program. So the SBA has a set of preferred banks that had been in operation, and basically that was a bank is allowed to do SBA underwriting, and the SBA doesn't have to go back and reapprove a loan. In order to get more banks, more institutions the ability to process these applications for their clients, the SBA has lifted that for this payroll protection program so that credit unions and other banks that weren't previously SBA approved can help their clients. But they draw the line with you have to be FDIC insured so that stuff like payday lenders and stuff can't get involved.
Okay, and I think, Andrew, you were alluding to this a little bit earlier, and maybe have you just take this a slightly deeper dive on it, is how is the loan size truly determined? How is that determined?
So the loan size is determined, it is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll expense, including benefits, paid time off, etc., with the exception of FICA. Federal taxes are not included, but an average monthly payroll expense times 2.5 is the amount that you can apply for.
Okay.
The loan is designed to be used for payroll, but can also be used for some other operating expenses, rents, mortgage, insurance, other costs like that. The use of funds, though, has to be at least 75% toward payroll to be able to be forgiven.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you're kind of going down that path. So I'll lead you a little bit more on that. So what are all the costs that are eligible for payroll? when they talk about the payroll side, what costs are truly eligible for the payroll for them to be utilizing the PPP? And then also, Gene just brought up a great point too. What about seasonal workers? How does that work?
So for a seasonal business, the business can apply, can take their, February 15 through June 15 of 2019 payroll figures. Those are, at least that's the guidance that the SBA has published. Might be beneficial to be working with your bank in that case if your high time is perhaps around the end of the year holidays. A real portion of your anticipated expected payroll costs is really the best measure. So, Elias, can you back to your question about what costs are eligible to be considered in the calculation?
Yeah, in regards to the payroll side. So, obviously compensation, would be there. But what about like payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave? Is that included? Also in there as well?
Correct.
Okay.
Salaries, wages, commissions, vacation pay, retirement benefits, state and local taxes, all of that can be included in the calculation for your average monthly payroll cost.
Okay.
Two caveats there. If your business uses 1099 contractors, their pay cannot be factored in. Okay. 1099 contractors will be able to apply for their own payroll protection as of this Friday, April the 10th. The SBA has not rolled out exactly what that application package will look like. My anticipation is it'll be very, very similar to the traditional W-2 employer application that was produced or that was published this past Friday, April the 3rd. So 1099 employee salaries cannot be factored in, and neither can salaries of over $100,000. So if you have employees who are making over $100,000, up to that $100,000 for their salary line can be included, as well as benefits appropriate to that person.
Okay. And then you mentioned earlier, when the loans will be available. So you said as of last Friday? They can start as of this Friday. Okay.
Correct. So businesses that employ a number of people, anything less than 500, north of 1 and south of 500, could apply this past Friday. Sole proprietors and 1099 contractors will be able to apply through those banks and other SBA approved or temporarily approved institutions starting this Friday. And the application period will be from either last Friday, this Friday, through June 30th, or until the SBA funds have been exhausted. Okay.
And then, Gene, how is all this, now, are there new tax laws going into place for 2020? How is all this kind of affecting things going on right now, from your perspective as a tax professional?
Great question. There's several new changes. The really quick one is on payroll taxes. There is a deferment that's being offered for payroll taxes, which helps businesses as well as a self-employed person. It's not a forgiveness, it's a deferment, so it means you have many more years to pay it, basically 2 right now. That's the rules right now to 2022, to 2022. And that's up to 50% of the qualified wages for an employee. All right, so that's there. That really lets you not have to put your payroll deposit in right now for either the March quarter that just ended or the June quarter that's coming up. So that's a good thing on the business side. On the personal side, we've already allowed for a $300 above the line charitable contribution. So for people who want to help different charities, they're going to be able to get an advantage of that. That's little, but it's a big thing. The other thing is we've released having to do an RMD this year for anybody that's 72 and a half or young or older that has to do an RMD. That now does not have to be made this year, which is big. That's going to help a lot of people at the back end. We've also allowed for some rules on, I'm going to read on my notes on this one, some rules on taking out some money from your 401ks if you need a loan. There's new rule changes on what you're allowed to do, which is good, and also a waiver on the penalty for taking money out of your IRA if you need it to get by right now. So some good things already. What I do know is that this is constantly changing. We're going to see way more rules as we go forward, lots of rules. And then there is the whole stimulus thing, which I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or come back to that.
Can I ask you a question about something you just covered?
Yes.
When you said taxes for 2020, do you mean the ones we're filing now, this year?
No, the ones that we'll file next April.
Okay.
So I guess I don't know what reference you are. Is it in regards to the timing of payments? Because that way we can kind of push off to a little bit later to get towards the end. Or is there something else that you wanted to share on that in regards to this?
With the payroll payments, really what this is basically saying is those deposits, the payroll deposit, half of the payroll tax, 6.5% that goes into payroll tax does not have to get paid right now. It can get deferred. And we've got 2 years to pay them to make those deposits. So that's a big deal. For a bigger employer, it's a big number. For smaller employers, it's a little bit. For a self-employed person, it's part of their taxes that would normally be due. So that's immediate relief to say, keep your cash, because you need to spend that on to keep your employees, you need to keep your rent, you need to keep all these other things going.
Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. So what if I already have an existing loan through the SBA? Will the PPP loan also coordinate with that?
Good question, Elias. So if a business currently has an existing SBA loan, whether 7A or 504, payments for those are automatically being deferred, similar to the PPP program, where it's going to be a 6-month payment deferral. Businesses do need to keep in mind that interest can continue to keep accruing, even though the payments have been deferred. So it's not really a penalty necessarily, but the interest is still active. So really, the payroll protection program, while it is piggybacking on a 7A program through the SBA, doesn't have much impact on any existing SBA facilities that a business might have.
Awesome.
If a business has already been awarded an economic injury disaster loan, an EIDL, which was applied directly through the SBA, it is possible to refinance that facility with the payroll protection program. That way, so the SBA EIDL program is a traditional loan. Being able to refinance it under the payroll protection program will allow businesses to convert it to a forgivable loan as opposed to carrying a traditional loan.
Okay. And then, so what happens if I have an economic injury disaster loan? I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, but is there anything different that happens if I already have one of those in place or one of the grants?
As far as I understand it, the approval or the application status of the EIDL or Paycheck Protection Program should not be impactful on the other one. The way I read the language in both, a business can apply for and be awarded both parts.
Okay.
The Paycheck Protection Program is administered by the banks, and the EIDL is directed and administered directly through the SBA. So there are some differences on the amounts that can be applied for and their term and that sort of thing. With the payroll protection program, you can apply for up to $10 million. You don't need no collateral is necessary for the guarantee. And there's no personal guarantee as well. If the loan becomes considered forgivable, then it's not considered as income from a tax perspective. is the way I understand the
Right.
payroll protection program as well.
Okay. Is there anything you wanted to add on that, Gene?
No, just Andrew's right that reading it, it's not, if it's forgivable, it doesn't become taxable income.
Okay. Very good. Hi, Daryl.
Hello.
How are you?
Long webinar.
That's right. That's okay. That's right. See, this is where the moderator gets thrown for a loop. Now I have a third person to talk to. That's okay. We'll be all right.
How's everybody doing?
We're doing fantastic, sir. Thank you
Good.
for joining us.
Hi, Daryl.
So just to kind of catch you up to where we're at right now, so we just kind of finished talking about the PPP. Andrew and Gene filled us in quite a bit. We're actually going to transition now to the Small Business Debt Relief Program and talk a little bit more about that. But, Gene and Andrew, is there anything else that you feel that I missed that would be extremely important for anybody listening to this recording to know? In addition,
Yeah, just at some point, Elias, going back to some of the rules on the personal side, because for many people, the personal stimulus is going to tide them over till some of these other programs come into place.
Okay, so do you want to go ahead and hit on that? Why don't you go ahead and hit on that now before we transition?
Okay, so on the stimulus side, the IRS had said as of yesterday that they're going to get the money out starting next week, which is even faster than almost anything else. April 7th, they're starting the first wave of payments starting potentially tomorrow, but probably Monday. As of April 17th, they're going to have what's called a wizard on the IRS website where you can say, where's my payment, to see where your payment is. If you filed a 2018 or 2019 tax return with a refund, it's going to go to that deposit account directly. If you filed and that's going to be wave one that goes out first. The second thing that's going to happen is the second payments are going to go by mail if they can't do a direct deposit. And those are going to be for people who had no refund or had a paper check mailed to them for those years. That's going to be wave two. There is going to be the ability for someone who hasn't filed to do a simple tax return. That started today. So as of today, we can do those returns for people. The IRS is recommending that nobody charge for those, that those are free for people who otherwise don't have to file. People will get $1,200 per person, $2,400 for a married couple, $500 for each child under 17. And what we're seeing just on the street level of this, some people are trying to play games with all of this, and I wouldn't recommend it because what's in the small print is this is a refundable credit that gets synced up and potentially has to be repaid next year. So it's not a freebie for everybody. It works much like the way the premium tax credit worked on healthcare, that above a certain income level, you're not necessarily, they're saying you might have to return it. That's the words they're using. You might return it.
So then you bring up a great point. So what are those income levels of those kind of hit?
Completely great. For a single filer, it completely maxes out at $112,500. For a head of household family, so a single parent family, $150,000 is a top max, and for a married couple with no children, $198,000. So it's got some pretty big limits, and again, it is going to get reconciled on your 2020 tax return. But like I said before, there's going to be lots of changes between now and 2020. So I've just encouraged everyone that's called me and asked about it, don't play games, just do what you're supposed to do and it will get reconciled. And if you haven't filed an 18 or a 19 tax return, now's the time to file it. You can get this credit up through September 30th. And if you don't get enough credit, you're going to get more next year when you file your taxes. If you got too much, again, you may have to return it.
I like that. I like the air quotes.
That's coming from the IRS.
and I'm sure that's exactly how they put it out there. So
it is. It's exactly in the language.
So Daryl, I know you were on a pretty important call prior before joining us today. So is there any updates that maybe you've learned today on the payment protection program that maybe you want to highlight, or maybe that's going to be something we want to discuss a little bit later also?
Well, in our case, it seems like that's been twice a day where we've had these webinars and communications from the president where they've learned that the SBA has made additional changes. I mean, the president's been in conference with the treasurer, And he's conveyed additional changes in terms of if things are not presented correctly, they will get kicked back. In terms of, like, for example, you have to be able to document ownership 100%. For example, if there's 10 owners to a company, you have to have an application process you're putting in for each one of those owners. If you only put in 90%, it'll get kicked back. It has to be for every single. If there's 20 owners, you have to put in for all 20. All 20. Doesn't matter what percentage that they own. They all have to be put in there in the application process, or it will get kicked back.
Wow.
It's a tedious little process.
Sure.
There's still some unanswered questions that we're still waiting on in terms of how to enter certain things like churches. We still don't know the parameters as to what to put in for churches because there is no ownership rule structure for a church. So how are you going to put that information in? How are you going to put in the owner's social security number when there is no social security number for a church? So right. It's still stuff like that. The SBA has not figured it out yet.
So one of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier is about what about if the owner is a retirement plan? So how does that play into what you just brought up there?
Well, the owner, the way it's set up here is you have to provide payroll records from January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. And you're putting in information, basically the total wages that including bonus. You're putting in the health care that they provided. You're putting in if their vacation was separated out, there's a separate revenue for that. It has to be put in separately. If there's retirement that you paid out, that has to be, you have to be able to document showing that actually was paid out, and you enter that information. All that goes into the total income for that individual. Okay. Now I had one case here where they haven't paid out 2019 retirement yet, and so they can't add that into the calculation for the payroll.
Sure. Okay. So is there anything else that you guys feel we need to cover in regards to the PPP before we make a nice little transition to small business debt relief?
I've got just some quick closing thoughts.
Okay.
So as banks are going to be administering the payroll protection program applications and forgiveness feature in 8 weeks after the loans have been funded, each bank can have some different criteria and perhaps some different documentation above and beyond what the SBA requires. And different banks have been rolling out their programs at different times after the SBA has announced all of the final rules and regulations, or all of the most current rules and regulations are. And as has been alluded to a number of times, it's continuing to evolve. But my advice to small businesses would be to work with their banker to get their documentation as in line as they possibly can and get their applications submitted as soon as they possibly can, with the caveat that it needs to be detailed and accurate.
That's very good. I want to add on to that.
Yeah.
You are perfectly correct when you say that different banks have different criteria. I got a call from somebody where they placed an application and they were told that the bank was starting with single entity corporations. Then they were going into multi-entity corporations, and they're working their way down to C Corps, down to limited liability companies, down to partnerships. And some banks, we don't operate like everybody's treated the same way. So he was a little bit frustrated because he was further down on the list before he was even going to be considered for his application was even going to be processed.
Sure. Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's what you guys what you both just said, I think is extremely important. Obviously these are things you don't want to leave to chance. So, consult a professional, consult somebody who's dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sure at the end of this call, we'll make sure that we get you people's contact information. I'm sure that people on this line are are okay with answering emails where they can, et cetera. To Andrew and Daryl's point, just consult somebody who knows what's going on to do it right and do it right the first time. That's kind of what I'm hearing, right?
Right. And to add to that, it's important that they talk to the lender and say, let me go over everything to make sure I have provided you with everything that you need to get the process going. Because the last thing that we want is to add on to their frustration level, and because they're already frustrated now because their businesses are not operating where they should be, or some of them are not operating at all. So it's important that the lenders really try to reassure their partners that we're all in this together, and I want to make sure that I have everything that I need to get your application flowing through smoothly.
Yeah, Daryl's exactly right. Since the banks have to process the application, if there are errors or incompletions on it, the bank will and the client will have to continue to go back and forth, which obviously will serve to delay the approval. And meanwhile, it's a first come, first served basis nationally. So if that process ends up delaying to the point where the federal funds have been exhausted, the bank won't be able to, the program will be over, potentially.
Sure. So I have one final question before we move over to the other one. Is that if I've already submitted the economic injury and disaster loan and emergency economic injury grant, or the EIDI, can I use a different bank to qualify and submit for this PPP or even the small business debt relief loan or program? Be
But on the application, it will ask you that question: Have you applied for that? Okay. And you need to be honest and say, okay, hey, this is what the amount that I've applied for. You may not have received approval yet, but you need to let the lender know that, okay, this is what I've applied for, so they need to take that into consideration.
Okay, very good.
That's exactly right. The EIDL loan program, you apply directly through the SBA website or a paper application. However, the digital application is the preferred method of application. Payroll protection does run through the bank, so they are on kind of two separate channels, if you will. But businesses, like Daryl said, could possibly have both. The payroll protection is designed for payroll purposes, whereas the EIDL loans can be used for a mixture of uses, but are not to be applied to payroll if the business also got the payroll protection.
Okay, so then how would
But Andrew, just to go a little further, you can't. It starts with payroll, but it can be a mortgage payment afterwards, or it could be utilities afterwards as well.
Correct.
He's correct. It starts with the payroll.
So then, how would I find an SBA lender to work with?
The SBA site has a listing of all the approved lenders.
Okay.
That's one way. My suggestion would be that the faster way would be to contact your current bank.
Okay. No, that works perfect. So let's move over to the small business debt relief program. So which SBA loans would be eligible for debt relief under this program?
Well, the PPP loan is still eligible for this program.
Okay. Is there any other loans that would be eligible underneath this small business debt relief program?
Let's see here. Well, we already talked about the emergency relief program that's out there. Congress is debating, and as with Congress, they're talking about additional funds being released. The issue now is how those funds will be utilized. The goal is for those funds to start with small business first. There has been some give and take in terms as whether or not a certain portion of that should be set aside for minorities and women-owned businesses. There's been some issues about, as always, we're putting up bills in front of Congress. Everybody wants to add a little caveats on that has nothing to do with what the main focus of the bill is. So there is something in the works that's going to probably help out the small business as well. Andrew, you have anything you want to add to that?
The way I understand it is that with regard to debt relief, any borrower that currently has a 7A or 504 SBA loan, payments of both principal and interest are automatically being deferred for 6 months.
Okay. So then how would I know if I was eligible, for a 7A or a 504 or a micro loan? How would I know if I was eligible for one of those?
Just talk to your lender.
Okay.
So those products, Elias, that you're talking about are the traditional SBA products that have been in existence.
Yep.
Those are, if you will, the kind of the straight down the middle loans that the relief funds are working in tandem with regard to the deferral for payments. But those are still applicable. Businesses can apply for those independent of the relief funds and continue as normal operating procedures would be with those.
Right, because right now the SBA is still open for business, so they are accepting applications for all the programs right now. So if someone feels that, okay, the SBA is simply bogged down with the emergency relief effort and PPLs, that's not true. They are also still accepting applications for all the lending programs.
Okay. Perfect. Gene or anybody want to chime in on anything else on that before kind of move on? So that was sounds like pretty self-explanatory. And I guess again, if there's any questions, as Daryl mentioned, you reach out to your lender. You can go out to the SBA website from what it sounds like as well, and utilize some of their programs in there also. Gene, is there anything that you want to add from the tax side or from your perspective on any of this?
There's probably two things. One is that there are new rules on net operating loss carry forwards, net operating losses, how to recognize those. They're relaxing some of those rules for the 2020 tax year, which you don't want to have a loss, but when you have one, you want to be able to hopefully take advantage of that. And I haven't seen the details. I was looking to see if I could find them, but I can't. Right now, the two best resources I tell clients to go to is the IRS has a specific landing page on COVID-19 and all the tax implications, irs.gov, and then right on the masthead, it will show the COVID. And then the SBA.gov website has the same thing. You can go straight there. It's very good graphics to say, go here, look here, do this. And so absent knowing somebody like you guys, that's probably the best place for many people to look.
Very good. So let's just move over to our last couple topics here on the EIDL. So our businesses and private nonprofits in the state of Missouri, where we're going to kind of focus on, are they going to be eligible for the EIDL related to COVID-19?
My understanding they are. The only entities that I've been told is not is the 50C6s are not eligible. I do know that they're trying to work on a bill which will allow for that group to become eligible, but at this point in time, they're not.
Okay. So then let's assume that I am one of those people who do qualify for this. So what is the EIDL and what is it really truly used for?
So
it's go ahead, Andrew.
So the way I understand it, it was originally drawn up for natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc., and an economic impact as a result of those. Right now, of course, it is as though the whole United States has been hit by the same storm at the same time. So they are being inundated with questions and applications. But the EIDL program has been tweaked just a little bit, as we mentioned. Churches and some other nonprofit organizations which weren't applicable to the emergency relief funds previously, the CARES Act has allowed them to participate and to be able to apply for some of those funds. It is a traditional loan facility, as opposed to the payroll protection program, which has the forgivable feature to it.
And what is the max that I can get up to in the EIDL loan?
$10,000. Actually, I think it's changed to 25,000. Is that true, Andrew?
So I believe you can apply for up to $2 million. There is a grant feature within the economic injury disaster loan that you can be awarded up to $10,000, and that is supposed to be the rolled out to approved applicants in rapid order. I think the 25,000 that I'm remembering is the threshold for no collateral guarantee. Anything below 25,000 loan application for the EIDL doesn't require a collateral guarantee, is the way I'm remembering it, Daryl.
Yeah. And just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit too, so it's basically the emergency advance. Up to $10,000 to small businesses and private nonprofits who are harmed by COVID-19, and they get it within 3 days of applying for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, EIDL. So it's basically an advance. From what I understand, and again, please correct me, you guys are the experts on this, but the advance does not need to be repaid. That $10,000 advance, is that correct? It would not need to be repaid on that advance?
That's correct, but I can tell you right now that 3-day payment.
It's probably a little longer.
Yeah, it is longer.
Yeah. So under normal circumstances, possibly, right?
Yeah.
So then who would be eligible for an EIDL? And what can they use that money for?
They basically use it for any purpose for their business.
Okay.
I'm not aware of a size maximum with regard to the number of employees that the payroll protection program has. Sole proprietors on up, the way I read it, would be able to apply for the economic injury disaster loan.
Okay.
With that cap of $2 million.
Well, actually, I believe, Andrew, I think it was designed for companies with employees under 500 people.
Yeah.
I'm reading from one of my cheat sheets, and it's saying that the forgiveness part is for payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not you can't just use it for anything and have it forgiven.
Well, you can. It starts with that, but if it's related to your business, you'll be able to use it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, the definition that it talks about here says that all available, it's all available to pay for expenses that could have been met or could have not been met had the disaster not occurred. So including payroll and other operating expenses of your business. So it looks like it's relatively broad, but there could be some different things in there as well. So the final point on this is who would be eligible for the Emergency Economic Injury Grant. So I know this is a little bit of a segment on top of the EIDL. Who would be eligible for the grant? So Andrew, we can just go ahead and start with you.
The way I understand, again, the program is directed and administered by the SBA.
Okay.
Banks don't play a part in the EIDL. But the way I understand it is that any applicant could be an option for the emergency funding grant for them to get those funds to you within 3 days or as soon as the SBA can.
Okay.
Daryl, do you have any other thoughts?
No, that's perfectly correct. I mean, they're like I said, the only exemptions that I've read about it dealt with the 501 C6. So everything else, I have not read anything about being unable to apply for the funds.
Good. So one other quick point, and then we can kind of circle back and any final thoughts. So we're getting pretty close to our end here. But there's a ton of resources that are out there, and I think you guys have already mentioned quite a few of them. There is the SBDCs, or the WBCs, the MBDCs. So we love our acronyms here in the U.S. The SBDC is the Small Business Development Center. WBC is a Women's Business Center, and then SCORE is typically a mentorship chapter that there's a lot of things here locally. So by using those programs, is that something that these small businesses would have to pay for counseling or training, or is that something that's typically provided to them, as far as a resource?
That's a good question. I'm not familiar with their cost structure as to how they're compensated. Because typically with SCORE, it's usually retired business people or or professionals. So they share as the mentors, but it's in terms of how they function in terms of revenue. That's something I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of elaborate. So typically the mentorship through SCORE is typically something that's provided. It's always free, as you mentioned. A lot of business owners are retired, still want things to do. Great outlet. Counseling is typically free, and the training is typically at a low cost, through those partners. And the reality, a lot of the additional funds that Congress will be providing is going to really help keep a lot of that stuff possible. So there's going to be a lot of really great resources out there for a lot of people. Before we end, Jim, I'm going to throw it back to you. You mentioned earlier, I think it'd be a great point to just kind of reiterate, in regards to timing of payments, right? So if I apply for this or I go and get the PPP, when can I expect to actually get my money to help me to make sure that I don't fall, deeper down that hole than anything else?
So I'm not sure about some of the loan programs. I think that's Andrew and Daryl's. But on the tax side, it's if you filed an 18 tax return and you had a refund, that money's going to come automatically direct deposit into your account starting next week. After that, it's if you haven't filed, file something, because that's going to be how you get some money. And that money may be really, really important as a small business owner before everything else kicks in. Great.
And then going back to like the PPP or EIDL, or any other programs that we talked about today, kind of the same question to you guys is, if I apply and I get approved, how long of a window typically do I look, before I start receiving some of those funds?
Well, what we're telling our partners is the fact is, once the information is loaded into the system, they will get an email basically saying, okay, verifying this information is theirs. They acknowledge that it's theirs. We continue with the process. We send it out. Within 48 hours, they should get an email notification saying, okay, you've been approved for the funds. And shortly after that, we can start the process of either depositing the funds into an account at the bank or cutting a check for them.
Awesome.
What about you, Andrew?
My 2 cents answer for that one would be both financial institutions and the government are working just as quickly as they can. Like we mentioned, that the storm hit the whole country at the same time. So the Treasury Department, the SBA, individual banks, along with their different procedures and stuff that they're creating the wheel as they're on the bike right now. Are all working as fast as they can to provide, their clients and the communities as a whole with these funds as quickly and as effectively and prudently as possible.
Yeah, it's great. And I guess just one thing, and Daryl, you kind of alluded to this, and I think it's important, and I really appreciate you bringing this up. The process, right? I mean, exactly how does that process flow? So if I'm business owner A, and I come and I talk to my banker, so is it basically, I fill out the application, I get the email to verify, 48 hours, hopefully know whether I was approved, or if there's additional things I need to do, then it works for the processing from there. Is there anything else that you're seeing currently in the process that you feel would be important?
No, the only thing, like I said, is it's important that your banker is coordinating everything with you, so that he has everything he needs to speed up the process. So there's no being kicked out, your application being kicked out because you forgot to sign in a certain spot, or you forgot to provide the quarterly tax information that goes along with it. So that's the important thing, is if your lender has all the information to start with, the process should move rather smoothly. And if your lender is telling you something that, or for example, that you're being frustrated with your lender, it's okay. You should talk to somebody else. I mean, Andrew and myself be more than happy to talk to them and try to alleviate some of that stress they may be going through. But because we're all in this together.
Absolutely. Yeah. That, and if you guys don't mind, when this video goes out to the community and the people through the Kirkwood Repair Chamber of Commerce, I mean, are you guys opposed? Gene, you included on this, opposed with sharing your email addresses, so that way if somebody does have a question, they can just email you out directly. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Elias, I'd be fine with that. My approach to this whole thing is the most accurate information that we can get into the community, the better. People can make choices and create action, for themselves and for their businesses as best they can with the right information.
Very good.
And like I said, and it's important that our members know that not every bank operates the same way. So how one bank operates is not going to be the way that another bank. So if one member's telling you, hey, my bank did this for me and I got it just like that, that's not the same. That's not going to be the same process for another bank.
Sure. Okay. Well, very, very good. So again, I appreciate you guys' time very much. I thought this was extremely valuable. I learned a lot, of additional information, and I look to you guys as great support arms of the Chamber of Commerce, and for myself and our business that we have here as well. So I really do appreciate you guys taking time out of your days to sit and bring this value to the Kirkwood Chamber. It's awesome. To me, this is really what collaboration and partnership looks like. And I'm extremely thankful to be part of this and to be part of this group. So thank you. With that, Peg, I'm going to pass it back over to you, and anything else that you'd like to say.
Thank you, Elias. Thank you for moderating this. I think, and thank you, Gene, Andrew, and Daryl. I think the information that you provided will be very helpful to our members and to the community. So our intention is to send this out to members, post it on social media, and I think you've done a really nice job in a service today. So thank you for your time. Elias, you too. I know you're all busy. That's why we asked you to be here, because you're working on the front lines of this, of the financial effort during this time. So thank you all so much. And thank you all so much for joining us. If you need any help, Gene, Daryl, and Andrew, and Elias and I are providing our contact info. So please get to us if you have any questions or if you think we can be of any help in any way in this. Thanks.